welcome everybody. I guess thanks for joining us again today. We're going to do part 2 of our challenges discussion here. So everyone listening, of course, go over to breakthroughreipodcast.ca, listen to all the past episodes, and get in touch with our guests and get our free gift.
Yes, the ultimate strategy for building wealth through real estate. Go pick that up, and never miss out on a show, of course, and whatever else we got going on. You want to keep up to date with us? Go get on that list, get the free gift.
Absolutely. And go to iTunes. Please go over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review, and let us know what you think. Let us know what kind of guests you want to hear, what kind of content you want to hear. We've tried to cover as many different topics as we can possibly think of inside the realm here. But if there's something that you guys think that we should be talking about, or a guest that we should have on the show, let us know.
Yes, sir. I mean, we have so many people reach out to us to get on the show. I know we turned down like 95% of people that reach out to us, honestly, they come out and want to be on the show.
Well, it's not because they're not great guests either, but it's because oftentimes it doesn't relate to, we try to stay tried and true to bringing like Canadian content to this. So we've got some brilliant American guests. Like, you know what? We should probably start another one where we can talk to them. But this one we wanted to keep focused on Canadian content, stuff that was actually relevant for anyone in Canada listening, could do the strategies that the guests or Sandy and I talk about. Whereas I feel like if you've got people talking about, using 401ks and different kind of tax loopholes that they might have in the States that don't apply.
1031 exchange. We hear about that all the time.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So those kind of things, and they don't apply, we're not going to be sharing content with Canadians that can take actionable steps on what they're learning here. So that's what we've always tried to stay focused on here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got international people reaching out, all sorts of people like that. So, I mean, everyone should reach out to us if they want to be on the show and you're interested and you got great Canadian content and a story there, then we'd love to have you. And we don't allow everyone on, I guess.
And we talk a lot to people, like to Canadians investing in the States.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of them doing that. And so those are and overseas, obviously, different places. Yeah. So anyway, you get the idea. If there's somebody you want to hear on the show or a topic we haven't discussed, go on to iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and let us know who you would want to hear on the show and what topics we should discuss. So today we're going to do another one with just you and me. And we're going to continue off on the challenges discussion that we were having on the last show. And I think we covered quite a bit. Last time we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about contractors, issues at renovations, a little bit of JV stuff. And today we wanted to talk more on the tenant piece, like some of the challenges that we've run into with tenants. And a big portion of like mindset, really, which is the overarching issue that really gets in the way with all these other things, right? Like, so if you've got a contractor that's not doing your job right, or not showing up, or scamming you out of some money, or whatever the case may be, right? A lot of people might be like, well, what am I going to do? It'll like, if I fire him, what do I do? How do I handle it? Like, it's more of the piece where you go, like the mindset piece where you say, okay, something needs to be done. I'm going to figure out what needs to be done, and then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to take the next step of finding somebody else, talking to different people who may have been through the same situations. So a lot of it is based on mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And people don't get into real estate investing sometimes because they say, oh, tenants and toilets. Those are the issues that, like, the most minor things, really. Like, it's in the grand scheme of things, well, maybe not the tenants, but the toilets, come on. The toilet runs on and you need to call somebody in the middle of the night. You get woken up every once in a while to make some good cash flow, and you're sleeping while you're making that cash flow until you get the call. These are mindset things where some people are like, no, not going to deal with the toilet. And so they don't take the first step. Right?
I agree with the toilets. The tenants, people do always say, I know you're just like taking that phrase from, you've heard that before, tenants and toilets.
Yeah.
Those are pretty different. Toilets, for sure. Tenants, we're going to have some funny, interesting, not funny, that's probably the wrong word. Interesting
funny is not the right
here.
word.
Yeah.
Funny is far from the right word. Yeah, that's right.
There is so much. We'll get to that, I guess, in the mindset part. But yeah, so many people just fizzle away or run away, after just slightest bit of a challenge, which is inevitable. And even these tenant stories that we'll work through today, they're pretty much inevitable overall. If you do this long enough, if you do enough properties, you have enough tenants, you're going to have interesting issues that come up.
Yeah. Okay, Sandy, why don't you get us started with some kind of tenant story that you want to share?
Especially because we have our property management company now, and we've had it for a few years, Found Spaces, and with that company, we've had a plethora of interesting tenant stories. Almost anything you could probably think of and imagine, realistically, even unrealistically, has happened. Things that you're like, that almost unbelievable, but it happened. So I guess it happened. I'll talk about something that, like, one big one that comes to mind is we did have a murder in one of our properties, which was
really
interesting. There's a lot of fairly comical stories, like sexual things that are happening or like sitting on beds and stuff as you're doing inspections in properties.
Okay, so let's just go straight to the murder then. Like, forget the funny stories.
Funny stuff.
I just, it's like you just go, oh, we got some hilarious stories, but let's just go to the murder. But no, that's terrible. That's really awful. What happened?
I don't know that. So I don't know the actual final version because there was a police investigation and all this stuff, and the actual results, for whatever reason, were never disclosed. Not to us, not to newspapers or anything like that. I don't know how they determine like what makes it to the press or whatever or not. But this one, for whatever reason, we didn't get the full story. I do have a pretty good understanding of something of what happened and maybe some hypothetical things that really triggered it. But to add to this is in a property that was a fairly new JV, a brand new first property we did together with a JV partner. And so this partner, we had only been partners for about 6 months. And we bought this. This was pre-COVID. So this would have been like 2018, 19, I want to say. Probably 2019. And we had bought it. Decent property, triplex. This is in Hamilton. Gonna make Hamilton look bad. This is in Hamilton. And
murders happen everywhere, man.
They happen everywhere.
Yeah.
So it was a property that it was a reasonable property. This was not a home run grand slam purchase or anything, but it was a good deal. We bought it with a new JV partner, and things were going pretty well. I mean, we renovated it. This was a Bird project. Renovated it, refinanced. Nice new property. Had a few nice new tenants move in. One of them is a couple. This couple, a couple months into their tenancy, one of the partners moved overseas. Sorry, not overseas, out of province to Alberta for work. So this was the tenant on, not on title. The tenant that stayed, like the one that's the main tenant, even though they were a couple, it was really a main one, and then they weren't married, so they were boyfriend, girlfriend. So the one that was really the main tenant was in the property, but the boyfriend had moved over to Alberta for work on a contract. So they were expected to come back at some point in the next year or so. And so Couple months in to that happening, the other tenant, the upstairs tenant, makes a call to us, our company, our property management company, and they say, hey, there's some weird smells happening down below. I don't know what's going on. Never smelled this before. I think you should come check it. I've knocked on the door. Nobody's answering. And I don't know what's going on. Same day, we got a message from the boyfriend over in Alberta. Hey, been trying to reach so-and-so. Can't reach them. Can you go inspect and see what's going on? Nobody's really expecting anything too bad at this point. Maybe the tenant that was there, the upstairs tenant was, but we go inspect it, we go look in, and this is not there's just someone dead there. There's not necessarily blood all over the walls, but there was a bit of a scene. I didn't go personally, so I don't have the gory details, but there's a bit of a scene. There's some blood on the floors and walls and stuff. It's not like they just died in their sleep or something. There was obvious sense of something happened there. And so obviously first, you see that, you go,
in a body shit. Or just blood? In a body.
So you see that obviously, and your first reactions are like, holy crap, like what the heck, what do we do about this? And so we call police. Got all the authorities in on this to investigate. They came in, they did their whole thing, and tenant upstairs got kind of freaked out. Everyone's pretty freaked out because the person over in Alberta is freaking out, really sad. Obviously, not a funny situation, a challenging situation. Because we had to figure out what happened there. There's all these debates now around, are they going to pay anymore? Like, there's the obvious emotional side of it, which is one piece. And you're trying to run a business at the same time through this property to, make that work. So you have to kind of get into the human side of things a little bit, obviously, in these scenarios. And we have a partner who doesn't really know much about this, like is a first-time investor and first-time investor with us.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been quite a bit easier if this was just us. But I was doing a presentation actually on this yesterday with a group of realtors. We were talking about the pros and cons of JV partners, and I didn't really bring up this story, not specifically, but these are one of the things these times where the JV partner would have been nice to not have, because just even talking through that, I'm trying to not freak out the newer partner that we have, and death and tenants, and the whole question of, do we get them to pay or not pay, or do we have some allowance on that? Like, people have different opinions on that, even in situations like this, especially partners that are really removed from the situation. So we had to navigate that. We ended up, the tenant that was moved over to Alberta ended up didn't want to move back. They came back for a short time, but didn't want to move back into that property, understandably so. And this was, they signed a 1-year lease contract. Now you got to go rent out a place that just had a death in it, right? Or you have to sell the property, or you have to do what do you do? There was a big investigation. We couldn't do anything in the unit for well over a month because the police were doing their thing. Like I said, I don't know the actual result of it. There was not a fun cleanup of it all, which 95% of it landed on us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the authorities don't do much in that case.
Really?
They pretty much removed the body and then left the rest to us.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't think stuff like that happened. I thought that there was,
we had to clean all of it up. Yeah, it was not fun, of course. Nothing.
Did you go there at some point?
I didn't go at all during the actual I have gone back there since. We actually sold the property about a year and a half to 2 years later. We never leased out that unit again, ever.
Okay.
We didn't. We sold it not directly because of that, but that kind of led to some other things. The partner got a little just not a great feeling about it. The
Bad
whole
taste, right? Like
bad
it's a bad,
taste, yeah.
yeah.
Ultimately, that kind of ruined we never bought another property with that person.
Mm-hmm.
It created not like nothing too terrible, but it was just they didn't really want to. It honestly it took them away from investing in real estate. Is from what I know, is that
Right.
they have not bought any other properties. They've got a bad taste about investing in real estate. And it's hard to blame them.
Yeah.
However, it's a reality that things like these things do happen in life.
Well, the thing is, like, I remember I mentioned on the last episode that when you decide to be a real estate investor, you put all the challenges in front of you that real estate investors have. And quite frankly, this is not really one of the challenges
Not
that,
a typical
I mean,
one.
you get some pretty serious things going on, but most of the time, you're not going to be handling something like that most of the time.
Like death is one thing. I mean,
Death
that
is one thing
happens.
for sure, and that does happen. And
Suicide's a tough one. Even suicides, I would argue would probably happen more often in someone's personal home, at least.
yeah, probably.
Which I do not believe I've had one of those. But then murder, that out of all that investigation and everything, they did confirm that it was a murder. Like that was their. I guess they didn't 100% confirm that. I didn't know. I don't know if they actually found who did it, but it was not suicide. Is my point. They did
Okay.
not. They
Yeah, yeah.
established it was not self-inflicted. um, all sorts of questions. People are like, well, maybe the tenant upstairs. They become one of the prime suspects because it's like the only person that was definitely in the property a lot, right?
Right.
So not in their unit, but in the property. So it brought up a whole ton of questions, and they questioned everyone. They questioned our company quite a bit, and yeah, interesting, very interesting situation. Not fun, and imagine that happening on, like, imagine that was our first property or first, JV partnership
Right.
ever or something
Yeah.
like that. That's what I kind of think about. That it would have left some pretty bad taste in our mouths too.
So I think, I mean, in that kind of situation, you can do a couple of things, but I think probably most of the time people would want to just do what you guys did and sell the property.
So this is a really, we went to sell the property, and now the question coming up of what do we need to disclose and all that,
Yeah.
which was a very interesting one
I was going to
because
ask you, but I didn't want to put you on the spot to that extent. So I was
I
waiting.
yeah, it it was very interesting. So it, the reality of what I learned in that is that you do not need to disclose this specific scenario,
Okay.
and you can if you want to. You don't need to because it was not the homeowner.
Okay.
That's what I learned through it.
Okay. What okay, so if there's a death in the house and it's not one of the
And there was not confirmed, like if there was a confirmed police report and everything like this that came out, then apparently you would actually have to
right, that
disclose
makes
that.
sense.
But
Yeah.
we never actually got, like, they never released anything confirming, like they didn't 100% confirm it was a murder. We
Mhm.
strong suspicions, because what else would it be? We didn't
Right.
we pretty much confirmed it was not a suicide, but again, there was no final like report released. So it was really interesting. I mean, it could still be ongoing, the investigation. I don't know. This is like a few years ago
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah.
this is like a cold case, I guess.
Like that's pretty heavy, Sandy. But I
It's a
mean,
good
like
start, right?
these, yeah. So now I think basically it's just good night, everybody. If you don't have a challenge this bad, then you're all good.
Yeah.
You know?
I have another one that's not necessarily lighter, but it's not even lighter. It's almost worse. But it's not as a depressing or long of a story. But something definitely more common. That's why I'll share it, I guess. But it was
Okay.
we had, so one thing that happens with tenants a lot, and this is with good or bad or anything with tenants, is things in their life change over time, right? So you have tenants who start out really good and could be incredible, and then over the long haul, in a matter of a couple of years, in the matter of 1 year, things change in their life, and that's what this story is about. So we had a tenant that moved in into one of our properties in 20. This would have been about 2016, and they moved in. She was a nurse. She moved into our property, and really good looking tenant. Like everything was on paper really good, and she's working close by in the neighborhood. Nurse, pretty high quality tenant, good income, all this stuff. Brand new unit again, and then a couple years go by. She's nothing comes from this tenant. Like, one of those tenants you barely ever hear from, which is always nice. We've done inspections there. Everything's looks good. Everything's in good shape. About 3 years into the tenancy now, she, all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, starts to have some money issues. You get that sense that there's something weird going on in her life and all this. We reached out a few times to try and kind of understand what's going on. Couldn't understand it. By the way, she had a kid at this point. She had a younger kid, like I want to say about 1 year old, and maybe slightly older, maybe 2. So she had a baby in this time period. She didn't have one when she moved in. She got pregnant, had one, and then so this is like 3, maybe even 4 years into her tenancy, and this does involve police again. Unfortunately, but there was we got a call. Sorry, we actually had to start the eviction process because she was getting really behind in paying, and we did not complete the eviction process. We got a call from again another tenant in the building. This is a 5-plex, so in the building, another tenant called because the baby kept crying next door, and she's like, "This baby's like nonstop, won't shut up, and I don't hear anyone else there." She's like, "I think we should call someone to come see what's going on." And the long story short in this is that she had run away, left the baby almost a full day, I think, at this point, by the time someone came. And the tenant called and like the baby's nonstop crying and you got to come. And so we went in, the baby's there, no tenant. Tenant's gone. She got tracked down, and she had long story short, she got into a bunch of drugs with her boyfriend that was not her boyfriend at the start of this, but a couple of years in became her boyfriend, drug dealer. This is the stories from the other tenants. Drug dealer, basically ruined her life, and she got into a bunch of issues with that. She ran away with the guy, the boyfriend, and decided it was smart to leave the baby behind for whatever reason. She ended up in jail because of that situation specifically. I'm not sure what happened to the boyfriend, possibly in jail too. And we were left with a whole bunch of missed rent payments that are not, pretty much made no sense to go after. And I think we ended up losing out on like over 10 grand in that scenario. Perfect tenant at the beginning. Like it was a perfect tenant, A+ tenant, great credit, good job. She worked right near the area, made everything about her story made sense to be there. Good person, good communication, minimal communication, which is always nice. She wasn't bugging us for a bunch of different things. And so that's kind of what I want to share in that is just there's luck and bad luck, good and bad luck in these scenarios. I don't know how we could have avoided that. It's just something that happened.
Right. I mean, I remember, well, first of all, that is not worse than the first story because luckily someone was there and, was able to.
No deaths. You're right.
Right. Like the baby was okay. Everyone was, they were alive.
Yeah.
So that's good. But, and like, speaking of like lost rents and things like that. So, we had a tenant one time who is sort of on the other side of it is like paid the rent all the time, but just trashed the house. Right. So every time I went, I'm just like, oh my God, this place is going to be completely destroyed if we ever get it back. So I got to the point at one time, these people paid all the time. really nice people, but they were completely ruining the house. The dog was like up on the walls and scratching everything, ruining everything. They were very, very dirty. There was garbage like from one end of the house to the other. You couldn't really even walk anywhere. And you know, at a certain point I was just like, I'm just going to ask them if they'd be willing to leave, you know, because it got to the point where like, all right, well, this is going to take a lot to, and it's going to get even worse. So I asked her if she'd be willing to leave, and she broke down and started crying like right there in front of me. Right. So, and you probably know who this is, because it's the one from the house, from our first.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I asked her to leave, and she started crying, and said she has nowhere else to go, and they love it here, and it's their family home, and all that kind of stuff. And so I left, and then shortly after that, they burned the kitchen down. And then I said, you know, will you please leave now? And then she went, okay. So I guess so.
After she burned the kitchen down.
Yeah.
Good.
And I mean,
party gift.
I've done a couple of evictions, and they've went like, okay, you know, fairly well, considering some of the other stories that I've heard of how long things take. And oftentimes I will just say, like, you're really behind. Will you just move out? Right. Mm-hmm. And that's worked a couple of times, you know, and actually as recently as like a couple of months ago, had a guy that hasn't been paying
really behind.
I think he stopped paying in November. So what's that? Yeah. November,
4 or 5 months,
December, January, whatever, like 6 months or something like that. He didn't pay. Mm-hmm. And yeah. So sorry about that. I've got guys working on the house here, and I told them I was on a call, but they seem to want to talk to me anyways. But
you gotta tell them in Spanish.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
There's so many situations with tenants. Like, tenants are the human part of investing in real estate. One of the more human parts about it, which is always it's always the toughest part, right? Because emotions come in, and you need to. There's always that bit of a balance sometimes between. We talk all the time. We've had guests on all the time with that. We share, treat it like a business, right? And mm-hmm. and treating it like a business, I find is you know, if I really treat it like a business, I can think about my other business I'm in. I mean, there's a lot of human involvement in business. Like, so you want to treat it like a business in the sense that you know, have systems you follow, and right. you're not just like letting someone go off the hook just because they're nice people. Accountability is very important in business. Accountability to the people involved and all that. But you're also looking to achieve results from it, and certain outcomes that you need to hold people and systems accountable to. And sometimes things happen that just don't really apply, because it's more of a human thing that is, you can't really account for it ever happening, and they happen. Like,
right.
People have deaths in their family. They have deaths close in their family. Sometimes they have issues that are mental issues with people, with themselves, or with people in their families. And there's always those are the tough kind of gray area ones where you gotta balance that really true hardcore business like mindset with I gotta have a little bit of human side to things.
Yeah. And like, I think one of the big things is like not getting emotional, because if the tenant has a problem and they're taking it out on you, which happens more often than not, even if it really has nothing to do with you, or maybe, you know, the issue that's come up at the apartment is on top of whatever they're trying to deal with. So, you know, it's an extra thing that's aggravating them, but it's not the real cause most times of like a tenant's anger when they're expressing it to you. That's what I've found anyways. So a lot of times it took me a long time to learn this, right? Because I had a tendency to react. If someone's going to come at me, I might like get upset about that. But, you know, it's been a fairly decent amount of time now where I've realized that it's not a personal thing, and you just really need to listen, hang back, stop, don't get emotional, right? That's the biggest thing. I think is don't get emotional. Listen, like I've had tenants who told me I was the worst landlord in the world, and named off a bunch of reasons why. And I said, hey man, like this is the first time I've heard of this issue that you're telling me about. I'll have it fixed tomorrow. This is the first time you've mentioned it, and you're acting like it's been, a month of you complaining straight, and I just am sitting on my hands when it's not the case. You told me there's an issue, and now I'm going to fix it. And it wasn't even anything major. It was like they needed the furnace to blow harder or the air conditioner to work a little better or something like that, But I find that it's the issue that they're presenting to you is not the actual issue that they're having in their life, right?
I had this this week. I had this exact. I don't get involved with tenants too often these days, but I had that literally this week, and you're reminding me of a quick version of it that happens quite a lot. And usually our management company hears it, but in this case, our tenant is in a building that I also work out of sometimes, and so we have a commercial unit in this property. So she came knocking on our door during business hours and was like, "Hey, there was an issue with the whole parking setup and everything in our property, and so sometimes her spot gets blocked in, and it is a bit of an issue. Like I can understand her frustrations with it. And we've tried to, because it's not like we have different people showing up. We have customers sometimes showing up or clients and that. So there's a bit of, sometimes hard to, it's parking. Some people park and block people in. It happens all over the place. Right. And it was happening fairly consistently, and so she caught me there walking in or out actually of the building and started talking, and I understand her concern with it, but then she started piling on all the other things in her life that are going on, and why it's like, well, I had no sleep last night, and my kid has this issue, and at school there's this going on, and this and
right.
It's all it is, and it's like, this is the last thing, and I'm like, well.
Yeah, but at least then you kind of understand, like, because a lot of times, like you say, the level that they come at you with the parking thing, you're like, how does it, it is frustrating. I can get that. I'm not saying that I don't understand, but it's like, if they come at you at like a 10, they're like, where does this come from? Where did it come from? It's, and so then at least she told you, because oftentimes it's like, you have no clue, right? And you don't relate the two things.
I had no clue actually about this whole issue until I showed up. I didn't know because I'm not
just
overly
saying, like
involved in
the other stuff when she told you, like then you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's not, well, the parking thing's annoying, but here's why we're at a 10 level now.
Correct.
I had a couple of quick stories that I wanted to go over, and I've told these on other shows before, or on other episodes of our show before, but a long time ago. I remember one of the biggest ones that's sort of similar to your story at the beginning was I had a tenanted duplex in Oshawa, and I had it on the market to sell, and offer came in, we accepted it, and we went to go do the inspection, and the tenant had been an issue pretty much throughout the whole sale process, where oftentimes they were turning people away at the door, just saying, "Oh, I don't feel well. I don't want you guys to come in and see it, come back another day." And this kind of thing. So I knew the inspection was happening that day. I wanted to go make sure that everything was going to go smooth. They were going to get in and see the place, right? And get it inspected. So when I roll up, there's cops with the lights on, right in front of the house. And I'm like, what's going on? And the buyer's there, and the inspector's there, and the other realtor's there. And I walk up. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, apparently there was someone died in the house. And just then my tenant comes running down the stairs. There's an ambulance there. They jump into the police cars and the ambulances, and she's crying, and they drive away. They all just drive away. And so the buyer's like, well, I guess we'll just go ahead with the inspection. And I go, okay, yeah. One of the units was vacant, so they went in and they were going in there. and they carried on with the inspection. And about an hour later, a cop rolls back up to the house, and I went, no, like, I'm gonna go out and talk to him and tell them there's the inspection going on, like they're gonna ruin the sale. So I went out to the cop, and he goes, "What's going on? Like, what are you guys doing here?" And I said, "Well, it's my house, and we're selling the house. There's an inspection going on." And he goes, "Inspection? Like home inspection? This is a murder scene. This is a crime scene. Get out now." And so that was it. We had to shut it down. The buyer walked away, and 2 days later, I was talking to the tenant, and she said, and turns out the guy didn't die. He was home 2 days later with her. And I don't know what actually happened, but the cop comes back and says that it's a crime scene because there's been a murder, and nobody was dead and everything was fine. So I don't really understand exactly. I saw him actually 2 days later, but yeah. So that was really strange. So in essence, I had people telling me, you should sue the police, and I did lose. We ended up selling it, but I think it went for like something like 25 or 30 less, so that was kind of frustrating.
That reminds me of have you ever seen the movie in Step Brothers? And they're it's Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. They have have you ever seen that movie or no?
No, I haven't.
It's like 10, 15 years old now, but there's a whole scene in there where they live in the house, and they're basically tenants in this scene for the sake of the story. And then their brother-in-law is coming through and showing he's a realtor. He's trying to sell the house, and every time he comes to show it, they're doing they're faking deaths and faking murders and stuff just to get the buyers to go, not for me.
Well, and I mean, I mentioned this last time. I'm not sure. But I did. We were recently trying to sell a house and found out that every time someone went through, the tenant would say, why would you want to buy this house? There's way too many issues. And I've dealt with that a bunch of times because tenants don't want to leave. And also them saying, we're never leaving. We're never moving out of here. So that kind of stuff. But there was a place that I rented as a student rental. And it was a 4-bedroom house, right? So I thought, okay, I'll rent the 4 bedrooms to students. We found some guys who seemed like they were pretty good. They were there and this is the upper of a duplex. So 4 bedrooms, upper duplex. We had a very nice couple living downstairs. So in all fairness, I don't think that we should have went that route. I think it would have made more sense to just rent it as it, but I was like, oh, money, $500 a room, whatever. For this place, it actually worked out better to rent it as a student rental in my mind at the time. And so about probably a week after school starts, I'm going to say no more than a week, we get a call from the basement tenant, and he's like, there's fruit flies everywhere. I don't know what's going on. Nobody's been upstairs in like 4 days. And so I called the tenants, and they're like, oh yeah, we moved out. I'm like, you moved out? Like, what are you talking? You've only been there for a week. And they're like, yeah, we moved out. So I went over, and essentially they had just partied for three days straight. If you went into this house, you would think that someone was living there for at least a year, abusing the place. I mean, there's like food under dressers and stuff like that. And you're like, how does this happen in like 3 days? It was really bad. And when I walked in, you couldn't put your hand on the wall without squishing some fruit flies. And the fridge is open, filled with their crap. And it was really, really bad. And they left all their stuff. There was like childhood stuff there, like all of their actual, belongings. And I'm like, are you guys going to come and get this stuff? And they're like, no, man, just do whatever you're going to do with it. So we literally threw out all their like childhood trophies and this kind of thing, like, albums, just like comic books, whatever, like all of their stuff from their childhoods into garbage bags. We, I think, did 3, not sure the size of the trailers, but open bed trailer with the sides, 3 of those full.
After like a week, 3 days.
After 1 week. Yeah.
Wow.
And then had to deal with the fruit flies, and then apologize to the tenants downstairs for having them in there in the first place. So, that was interesting. That was a good one.
That's just the speed of which that took place is crazy.
It was mind blowing, because I'm like,
flies and bugs and stuff.
How do they all decide to move out in a week?
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's some weird situations that happen out there. The flies are kind of gross. It's always hard when it affects other tenants. We've had a lot of those situations with bed bugs, with bed bugs and cockroaches, primarily, where you have such a nice place. We've had awesome. I think sometimes it's not even our property. It's like property next door, or it's the one next door, or it's, we see, especially in downtown cores, like a Hamilton and other cities like that, you get properties where someone throws a bed, mattress in the street one day, and it's like 10 doors down or 5 doors down, and it's got bed bugs probably all over it. And somehow, some way, those bed bugs find their way into our house. Maybe a tenant walks by the bed or even touches it or does something like that, and who knows how they end up in your place. But that has happened numerous times. It's very, very hard to get rid of bed bugs in particular, cockroaches too. But
yeah,
those are ones I've learned. I never knew I'd have to learn so much about those 2 species. I never knew that there were so many issues like that happening, because I see it all over, primarily in cities like Hampton. I see it quite often, and they are tough to get rid of, extremely tough. And who the hell, nobody wants to live in that. And I still don't have the perfect solution, to be honest. However many times we've dealt with it, still no perfect solution. We have things that work 80% of the time, and then they come back after a year, and you're just like, ongoing challenges like that just are hard to find the actual solution.
I say a dome over the building.
Yeah, maybe
something like fumigate.
Yeah. But it's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like part of the process, right? You go through it, you deal with it. I mean, you ultimately have no choice but to go through it and deal with it. I'm not going to sell off the property just because. I might at times if it was the right situation, but I'm not going to sell off a property just because of that. Ultimately, it's not me going in and spraying or having to deal with the bugs or
right.
If it was me having to do that every day or regularly, maybe I'd think differently.
Yeah.
But if you can find ways to leverage and have people try and do their best to fix that stuff, ultimately you're talking about thousands of dollars that are in issues, but I'm okay with that, because I'm making tens or hundreds of thousands in the process. So
exactly. And you know what, that again, this all blends into mindset, right? So, and the long-term view. And if we want to go back to renos, I just wanted to make one little point here, and it applies to probably everything, but I know a lot of times where people because our primary focus was helping people with single family homes that could be converted to legal duplexes. Most of the time, that's what we're helping people with. So, when people come in and you go, oh, there's a load bearing wall here, you in order to open this up, you'll need to put some kind of a beam in, or you've got to replace this window with an egress window and that kind of thing. And they'll say, well, I don't know how to do any of those things. It's like, well, You don't need to know how to do those things. Here, like, this is how much it's going to cost to do the job and get it done. And from there, you just need to know that you have hired someone competent to do it, right? So I think that that's something really important to point out here, is that you're not going to know everything. There's no way to know everything. It's just the fact that, you know, at certain points of time, like these things that Sandy and I've just discussed, the problems disappear when you throw money at them, you know, and that's what it comes down to most times, I think, in certain situations. So just make sure that you've got a contingency, right? Fund, so that you can deal with these things, because they will happen. The roof is going to need to get done, and there is going to be some kind of a problem with plumbing, and your tenant is going to not pay for one reason or another at some point.
Yeah, you reminded me of a great book that I've read a bunch of times in the last few years, called Who Not How, by Dean Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And that book is exactly what you just went through, which is it's not how to do things, it's who you know and who can help you do things that get you ahead in life in the big picture. You know, it's about leverage, and a lot about leverage, but leverage through people. And if you know the right people, you don't even need to know the right people in these situations. You just need to know a person that can help you deal with, you know, putting in a beam, or what, you know, all those examples you went through. And that's why we talk about the importance of the power team and having the right people around you to help you through this journey. Because when you're dealing with that on your own, and any of these issues you went through, that's a hard journey. When you have people around you to support you, and you know, they know how to fix it, or they're there even just to psychologically keep you feeling okay during the process. I mean, that's an essential piece of the real estate investing journey, for sure.
Well, exactly. And like, because I built a team, you know, in Ontario, in Canada, in Oshawa area, like I just mentioned, we had a guy that I just, after a certain amount of months, I'm just like, look, can you just leave? Right? He's like, no, I'm going to pay you. We went through the process. We were actually in the eviction process. So, by the way, like Sandy said, treat it as a business. And we did that from the beginning, right? So you would file the paperwork, then they'd catch up. And then, you know, and so that's gone. Then you got to start over again. It takes a certain amount of time to get through the process. And anyways, but I still, you know, at a certain point, it's like, can you just help us? Can you just leave? Right. And now we've got to renovate that whole place. So just because we've built the team there that can do all that stuff, I can just coach from here and everything gets done. You know,
that's what people want. Like, I think most people are trying to develop some sort of freedom in their life by investing in real estate, right? That's usually one of the goals. This is one of the things I talked to, because I've had lots of investor clients that we've dealt with, where I've kind of wondered why they're getting in the way of their own success in a lot of cases. And I really like helping people through this, because it's an interesting journey they go through. I went through it too, and everyone does usually in their mind, where it's just like, you don't need to be the one doing everything, and you're actually going against what your whole goals are by doing that, because your goals probably are to not, like, unless it's part of your current business, like your core business, or it's a really, really just joyful part of your life, I guess, which might be renovations. I'm not sure there's too many people, although I've heard it, where people really enjoy dealing with the tenants and helping them through all that stuff. Most people want to have real estate to help them have more freedom in their lives outside of real estate. So the goal is to get rid of stuff, your to-do list in real estate investing. It's not to add on more, or not to necessarily learn everything at a high level. Everyone's a little different in that, but you don't need to know everything. You need to be the CEO of your real estate investing business, is where most people want to live. Be the CEO. You can be the CEO from Costa Rica if you want to, and invest in Ontario or BC or anywhere in Canada. You can be the CEO from anywhere if you're doing it at a high level. I think that's what most people really want. They want the freedom.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of people don't step back from the position that they find themselves in. And I find that a lot of times, like, for example, to hire property management, like, people just don't want to take that step a lot of times. And I think that's one of the single biggest ones that you can take. And we're like, well, look how much money that we're giving for them. It's like, first of all, if you step back, you can more easily grow if you're not handling all of these little things that come up on a day-to-day basis. And there's a lot of them, depending, like if you got 1 or 2 properties, okay, you can probably slide by with not having too many issues. But if you have a few more, I think that it's important to hire property management, right? Then you can understand that relationship too, and you can continue to grow. And I just think it's invaluable, the whole team.
Yeah. Property management's often especially, at a certain scale, you need it. There's no real question. But early on, people are always kind of debating, should they hire them or not? And there's obviously a cost to it. It's not exactly cheap per se, like to get a well done job. I think that's where most people have the challenge is especially in Ontario, because you're buying properties that are cash flow neutral or negative even at the get-go sometimes. Obviously you can find cash flowing properties in Ontario still. It all depends on your market and what strategy you're using, but it's tight. It's tight in general. Southern Ontario for sure is a tighter market than Eastern Canada and some of the other places. You're kind of trading that for the equity increase that we expect to potentially have in Southern Ontario. But the numbers get so tight that it's hard to really even afford a property manager, and they don't budget that in at the start, and then when they actually need it,
right,
they're like, well, how do I go from positive $100 a month to negative a few $100s a month? And they don't want to do that. But what's the other reality is you're doing a lot of work and you're gonna get a call on the beach in Mexico one day or something when you're on vacation, and you're gonna have to deal with that. I mean, that's the trade-off. If you can find a way to afford the few $100 difference, it's well worth it.
Well, too, I mean, I know that things have shifted and it is becoming more challenging to find these places, but I think for the most part, it's still very, very doable to find properties that, we focus, you and I, because we live there, on Southern Ontario, right? But, and I still think it's possible to find good cash flowing properties that cover, the property management fees and still cash flow quite well. The student rentals have been doing really well for us. That's been, even with the shift, we're still doing really, really well with our student rentals. So, and of course it does get tougher, but I was reading, I can't even remember the blog where I was reading it, but it was showing the increases in the rents over the past year. And like, there's been increases of up to 20% in certain areas of over the past year, just the past year. Canada only. So it was across Canada. It might've been Vancouver where it was a 20% increase.
I was reading something. I think I was probably reading the same thing. There must have been a big article somewhere about that.
Yeah.
I heard about it, or I skimmed through it or somewhere. And I think Hamilton was 11%. And
right.
I was having this debate with someone. Someone else told me about this article. I wouldn't read it. Someone else was telling me, because we were debating Alberta versus Ontario and the differences, pros, cons. And in Alberta, you can easily remove tenants. Ontario, not quite so easily. So that 11% sounds really nice. This was the point of our conversation. The 11% would be great, and I might have to wait 3 years to ever see.
If they would allow the 11% increase,
yeah,
that would be great too.
Exactly.
But no. So rents are. My point is, rents are increasing with the.
For sure,
with the increased mortgage rates and whatnot, because you've still got to cover.
They have to.
All
when
of these
property prices
costs
go down, right? Property prices go down. The reverse happens with rental rates always.
Exactly. Yeah. I just wanted to bring this up because I thought it was funny, and I don't know if it was real. I would imagine it wasn't. I think it was a joke, but it was some Facebook post, but it was a repost of an article of property for rent, and I can't remember. It was like whatever thing. Nice 3-bedroom home for rent. And then it said, no parties, no students, no pets, no new couples who are just going to break up after a month. No this, no that. And then at the bottom it went, you know what? Just forget it. I'm not going to rent it. I thought that was pretty funny.
You're gonna, yeah. All those other things will probably happen over your career, whatever was on that list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things happen. Shit happens. So
But
why don't we
anyway,
round out with the mindset of all this
right.
in a brief few minutes, I guess, because somehow we got to get through all this, and you can either decide to invest in something else, I guess, where you're going to get probably not as good of a return, certainly not as safe and as much
Tangible.
of a guarantee. Tangible is a better word. Yeah, it's really not as tangible, and yet that's one option. You can keep going through this.
A lot of people quit, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think everybody follows their own path, and if it's not right for them, it's not right for them. But to come into something like this and not expect challenges is silly. And that's the point of this whole thing, is like, just expect challenges. They're gonna be there, right? So I would even say, you know how in goal setting they say sort of shoot for the moon and get halfway there, right? Is a better way than setting your goals too low. Mm-hmm. So I would say, expect challenges like what Sandy and I have talked about here today. And if you expect those and you only get maybe half as bad, you're doing okay. Right?
I think that's a motto for life, honestly. There's so many things. People ruin their lives over expectations. They literally do. They sabotage relationships, business, investment opportunities. They, so many things where because they went into it with, rainbows and butterflies and everything's going to be all great. And I'm a fairly optimistic person, often overly optimistic. And I've certainly learned that challenges are inevitable. And as much as it looks like the perfect opportunity or the perfect thing to do, real estate investing is just so awesome and obvious, the place to go with your money. And that's great. But you still need to know that it's going to be a bumpy ride, especially early on when you don't know what you don't know yet and you're learning. There's going to be so many things you do wrong. There's going to be things that they take way, way longer than they should to fix. And there's going to be unknown, uncharted territory. All these things are going to happen and you're going to screw up. You're going to lose like tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars by some of the decisions you make. And like all these tenant situations here, we talked about, we're losing tens of thousands in these cases over the course of months or years. Like you can look at that and go, it's the hardest business ever. I just lost tens of thousands of dollars and it's not for me because I can't deal with that stress. And I mean, you're going to go invest in something else that's going to have the same issues. Like there's no other solution that's easier.
I mean, in all fairness, I think you're going to invest in something else and you're going to look at the returns and it's going to be like 3-4%, something like that. Right. Where with, or whatever, it might be 8, like there's some good investments out there, but for me, this has been ultimately more freedom than I could have ever imagined from when I started. Right. Because like I started from working 12 hours every day, getting home to see the kids just before they were put to bed when they were really little, I pick them up from school every day now, myself. Right. And hang out with them after school and before school. And just choose when I want to do whatever it is that I need to do that day. I basically can schedule it in myself. Right. And work around that. So this has afforded that kind of lifestyle, which I'm very, very blessed to have. And what Sandy and I didn't talk about was all of those super boring months where nothing happened and the rent check just came in. Right.
There are those too. Some of those happen.
But you're obviously not going to talk about those, but those months happen more often than these stories that we were talking about.
Yeah, that's true. people focus on the negatives in life, right? That's just people. And so the crazy stories, the interesting ones, the tough ones, those get all the headlines. And it's not all negative by any means. You made it to what you just explained, that sort of lifestyle, a heck of a lot faster than you would have just by doing what you were doing before, or by going after the 3, 4, 8% returns somewhere.
Right. Doing what I was doing before would have got me exactly what I was doing.
Right.
There was,
and you maybe probably never would have gotten to where you are right now, or
there's no way.
You certainly would have been a lot older.
There's no way. There's no way I would have got here. No way.
Right.
So, I mean, if you want to look at that, if I'll trade a couple of headaches where I got woke up in the middle of the night or had to settle tenant arguments, student arguments about who drank whose milk and this kind of thing, which I've had to do, but I'll take that. I'll take the challenges, every single one of the ones we talked about here, to get what it's afforded us. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Heck yeah. I would do not everything all over again.
No.
I would do a lot.
We got
of the
more
same
new
things.
Challenges coming up, so
yeah. I would do a lot of the same things, because a lot of the same things, ultimately whatever I've done, everything I've done, good and bad and kind of blah, has all led to where I am today. And so a lot of the lessons I have that I gonna at some point pay off down the road. Even the worst thing that happens to you, it's always a lesson. You learn, or you succeed, or you learn. There's really no failure. As long as you have that outlook, then all these issues that come up, you learn something, you move through it, and you just keep going.
Right. Turn the L into earning. That's what learning is.
Good one.
There you go.
I don't know if I've heard that one.
It's off a song.
Nice.
Anyway, good stuff, man. This is a great episode. I liked it.
Hopefully our listeners liked it.
I mean, we had a whole bunch of little nugget sayings there that could have ended the show well, but ultimately, really just, I think, expect challenges and you'll be okay. Expect the challenges, and then there's shows like this, or people that you meet in the world through just being in these circles that can help you through them.
If our listeners have challenges that they don't know what to do with, you don't have a team or whatever version of that, I mean, we're here for them.
Right. And how would they reach you if they wanted to talk to you about some of the woes that they're going through?
There you go. Easily find me on social media. If you want really quick access, DM me on social media somehow. I mean, Instagram, Facebook. I don't mean like instant access or instant response, but I'm pretty good on it. On there pretty much every day. So reach out to me that way, or sandy@freedomreps.com is also a nice, easy way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. I can be reached at rob@mrbreakthrough.ca. Well, thanks for listening. We should do more of these type of shows.
That was great. That was great.
And we'll see you next time, guys.